Hello, welcome back. This is TinaO from TinaO Life on 25 Nights to Close 50. If you're just meeting me, someone has sent you my direction. I'm that chick who last year did 50 nights of storytelling to celebrate my upcoming 50th birthday. My birthday's on Christmas Day, and so I started 50 nights on December 25th. And as this year started to wind down, I had the thought, you really consciously opened 50. So you better consciously close it. And what I mean by that is, we have a lot of energy that we put into starting something. And we have a fair bit of energy, crossing a finish line. But the crossing the finish line, the energy we have on crossing the finish line is just that. It's crossing the finish line. The intention is simply to cross it. We don't spend a lot of time and intentionality around holding the closure and acknowledging that there's closure. So as I started to see, you know, 50 is about to close and here comes 51. It's kind of like, I have two stories popping up in my head right now. It's kind of like, I didn't really see 51, it's like, oh, right, 51. Oh yeah, there's a 51. Because there was so much intentionality around 50, so much alive in me of questions and knowings and this, like aliveness, like drive forward. That like 51? What? So I have two little stories that just popped up into my head. I had a thought about where this was going. We shall see. So as I do these, let me just finish this little top and tail bit. So what this is all about is I'm doing now 25 nights to close 50, sharing some of the insights, ahas, and kind of game changer things that dropped in as a result of being so intentional in my 50th year. And so let me come back to these little stories now. So remember how I said I did it for like, what? There's 51? What? So I was wonderfully adopted by the Overbury Henderson family when I don't know, that it doesn't matter. There's like some say 6 months, some say 2 years. I don't know. All I know is there was a beautiful handoff between the people who adopted me and my mom, right around some age between 6 months and 2. And when I hit my mid 20s, I ended up looking for my birth mother. And both of my parents that adopted me passed away. My mom when I was 8 and my dad when I was 16. And so as my mid 20s struck, and if you listen to last night's or one of the nights anyway, I talked about how all I did in my 20s was cry, eat chocolate, and, party. So in that mid 20s, I was really looking for my roots. And there was an organization. I couldn't tell you who they are, and because everything's changed now anyway. Because I'm 50, so that would have been 25 years ago. It was through Family Services, I think, and it was an adoption registry. And you could do a passive search, which means if I apply and the other person applies, then that's the passive search. They just, connect you to. At that time, the adoption records weren't open to the public. They soon became open, maybe about a year later, something like that. And so we did the passive search, nothing happened. And so then we could do an active search, but I think it cost like $350 or something. And I was a totally broke artist at that time. And I think there was a bursary. I ended up getting a bursary, or I don't know, it was funded. I didn't have to pay for it. So they started an active search for my mom. I was looking for my mom. And as the search went on, about, 6 months went by and I'd kind of just put it aside. And then the phone rang, and it was from the registry, the adoption registry through family services, I believe. And they said, "We're having a hard time locating your mother, but we found your father." And I was like, "What? We found your father?" And it I was so like about that because it had never occurred to me that there was a dad, which is insane. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. I know what it takes to make a child, but I had an absolute like it just like 51. Oh, there's 51? What? Oh, right. Oh, right. 50's almost over. There's another year. I was so intentional around making a connection with my birth mother. It didn't even occur to me that I had a father. And so I sat with that for a bit and I'm like, okay, yep, yeah, I'd love to meet him. So they did a little introduction between the two of us and we ended up going and having lunch. And now about a year later, when I let go completely, just thinking it's just not going to happen, I got a call and they had located my birth mother. And so we ended up connecting and we're very close now. We're very close. But back to this 51 and birth father thing, it never occurred to me that I had a father because in my heart, I had never lost my father, even though he died at 16. That place was really full for me. But my mom died, and my mom was ill by the time I was 5. My mom was quite ill with cancer, and then she just kind of, I don't want to say vanished, but kind of vanished. We were quite shielded. My brother and I, who is also adopted, we're not blood related, but we're 6 months apart. We were the youngest of 5, and we were quite shielded from her illness and her death. So from 5 on, I have very few memories of my mom. So I had this longing, and so in my mid-20s, looking for my biological mom made sense. Dad? I didn't have a dad. So I share this with you because intention is a lot. Like coming into something is a lot. And intentionally closing is just as powerful, if not more powerful. This little story I have about that flashed into my head was I got in the middle of a dog fight about 3 years ago. About 3 years ago, I had a really big alpha anxious dog. And after my marriage split and it was just me and the boys, Muttley became even more protective of all of us because he was, he kind of saw himself as the man of the house, I guess, right? Now, where I live is there are dogs really, really close by, and there's a couple dogs that kind of move around the yard a fair bit, which used to make Muttley go crazy. Muttley hit passed last year. Just want to say that because I said it was past tense. And so it used to make him go bonkers. And this one particular day, I come home from a choir performance. It was a duo performance. So there was a matinee and an evening performance. And in between shows, I came home to have lunch and do whatever, rest, whatever. So I came in and someone came in to fix something in the house and left the door open. And so Muttley got out. And 2 of the dogs that were kind of roaming around were around. And so I went out there and I know my dog, right? I know he's not an attack dog, but he's an attack dog, right? Like he's not super vicious. I'm coming to get you. He's like, I'm going to protect my people. And then he gets super anxious when he knows he like all his signals would get all mixed up. He's like, I gotta protect you. You need to come inside. I gotta protect you. You need to come inside. I'm super anxious. You could die. You gotta come inside. And then he would get all anxious about it. And then would bark and kind of take off. And if he took off, that's it. It was over. So I came out of the house. I was calling him in and he wasn't coming. And so I walked around the house and the other dog was like the neighborhood dogs was right there. And they just started sniffing around each other and it looked okay until it wasn't okay. And then the fight started. And I grabbed a hold of him, and as I grabbed a hold of him, the other dog came out, who is not a sibling, but kind of sibling to the other dog. So now there's comes out and sees, you're beating up on my friend. I'm gonna get in there too. And so now there's two dogs and Muttley. I'm holding on to Muttley because he's a big dog. And I knew, if I didn't know, what do I know? But I believed if I let go of him, that was it. Like someone's going to die. And I might not be my dog. You know what I mean? Ugh. So I'm holding him and then I go down and I'm now on the ground with my big dog between two other dogs and rolling around and all this back and forth, back and forth. And you know what that sounds like, right? When dogs are fighting, uh, it's really scary. Like it's awful. And so at one point, one of the dogs on this side grabbed hold of my heel. I just got in the wrong place. Of course, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the right thing between two fighting dogs while holding on to my fighting dog. So one dog grabs a hold of my heel, and then I fling my hand, and another, my dog, I think, bites my hand. And I think eventually, I don't know what shakes it up. I don't know if eventually they let go. Somebody lets go. And I grab Muttley, can't even feel my foot. And I walk him into, I don't know, who knows where. My son Cedar, who at this time was 8, 9, was looking out the window and watched the whole thing. So he's panicked because he's just watched his mom rolling on the ground between two dogs, right? And now she's bleeding. I went down, I put Muttley inside, I grabbed Cedar, I grabbed my cell phone, and I didn't know what to do. You know, when you're in shock, you just like don't know what to do. So I walked down to the ocean and I just stood in the ocean. And I actually called my ex-husband. Not a good idea. We had just split. Things were not in a good communication place. But you're my autopilot. My head goes, talk to the person who loves you. Talk to the person who knows you. Talk to the person who catches you. Talk to that person. And if you listened to my last night's message and you heard me talk about the buffer, that whole piece of having that person in your life that often is a partner that buffers you from yourself. So he was my person from a long time ago. So I'm in shock. I start talking to him. He says something really stupid, as we do in post separation zone. And I remember thinking, this is really dumb. Click. And then I go into super high, like high reasonable. I'm like, well, I have another choir thing to do. I probably need stitches. I got another choir performance. Okay. Cedar, you got to come with me because your dad's picking you up the ferry. And I got to go to choir. So I wrapped my foot up in a red tea towel because I'm bleeding. And I got in my car and I left Muttley, who was bleeding, and went to choir and dropped Cedar off. Now, if I stop the story here, and there's more, of course, after this. If I stopped the story here, one could say this is an end to part of the story. If I stopped the story here and didn't finish it, yeah, some of you are on the hook right now going, what happened? Well, what'd you do? Well, what happened next? What's the significance of the towel? Did you get stitches? What do you mean you went to choir? What happened to Cedar? Where's Muttley? Like, so there's that. Okay, but that's about you, which is important, but I'm not telling a story to entertain you. I'm telling you a story. Now, in my own head, when we go through traumatic experiences, and that was traumatic for me, I still can't be around dogs when they bark because I think they're going to fight. And I breathe and I make my way through it. And now that Muttley has passed, I don't have to deal with walking him and worrying about all of like my body response that happens around all of that. My point is, though, when we have a traumatic experience or even a joyful experience, any experience, if we don't tell the whole story right to right through the transition, if we don't tell the story through the transition, our neural pathway of our brain stops in that one trauma place. And we start to believe that's what we respond to. So I have a really good friend who is a psychologist and brain science guy. And when I was telling him this story, he's like, you need to finish the whole story. You need to consciously close this story. And I'm like, I don't want to relive it. I don't even want to tell the story. Like, I don't want to tell any parts of the story. I don't want to live the story. I don't want to tell the story. He's like, yeah, no, you don't get to do that unless you tell the story all the way through, like right to the choir performance, right to the getting stitches, right to the laughs that you had in the emergency room with the guy you were dating at that time, who happened to be a fireman who knew how to do shit like that, who could sit beside me till 4 o'clock in the morning in Emerge and make me laugh while I was getting 22 stitches in my heel. Unless you tell the whole story, your brain doesn't have a chance to transition. It doesn't have a chance to finish the whole story loop. Remember I talked about story loops in the last few days? And the story loop, closing your story loop is everything when it comes to this. I use this visual called next stone in the garden. Like, you can only stand on one stone at a time. And until you're firmly, fully on that stone, you're not going to see the next stone. You can't step to the next stone fully until you've seen that first full stone. And so that's it. I couldn't see 51 until I was willing to close 50. I couldn't heal my brain, the trauma in my brain around the dog bite, until I consistently told the whole story. I did the choir performance. It was like this weird, funky, great thing. I had a solo. It was awesome. I did the whole thing with a tea towel. I did get stitches here on island I didn't get stitches. I got bandaged here on island. And then I went to Emerge. We were there till 4 a.m. I was dating this guy, super funny, laughed my head off, was super brave, 22 stitches. Totally healed, pulled out my own stitches, have a laugh about it now, still have like stuff around dogs, but that's the whole story. So I share that with you because I want you to know that one of my ahas this year isn't that story, because that was actually before that. But one of my ahas this year is I'm going to Ireland because I've been called in my own sort of I don't know way to complete a story loop that has something to do with my ancestry. It has something to do with what I'm calling earth scars, trauma scars in the earth. It has something to do with a space I can't put my finger on. And it feels like mist. It feels troubled. It feels like it's directly connected to my definition and desire for rest. And I'm not talking about death rest. I might be talking about death rest, actually. Sometimes I think there are pieces of us that really just want to rest and let go. I'm here for a lot longer. Hello. But there's story loop that I'm going to complete. and I understand the significance of it now. And sometimes I just want to bypass those story loops and just go, yeah, yeah, whatever. I'll figure its way out. No. So tonight's 25 nights to close 50. Tonight is night 10. It's about closing your story loop, giving yourself the gift, giving myself the gift of shaking hands with the story that's called me so I can hear the next step of where I am to go and be. Thanks for being with me. I'm TinaO from TinaO Life, 25 Nights to Close 50. If you have not watched Oh My God yet, which is set in Ireland, the link is down here. If you want to be part of my next 50 nights of stories, and they're actual stories, not just me going live here talking about whatever is inspiring me, 50 nights of writing and pieces and bits and inspirations beginning January 31st, there's a link down here as well. Thanks for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being in practice of listening. We need more listeners in the world. Thanks for being here. See you again.